Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here. And lo and behold, I began to watch part 2 of the Transformers conference that we covered here because of its outward agenda of from transgender to transhumanism from the outset. Remember, this is a forum put on by the Bezos-owned Washington Post. And on top of that, part 2 starts with NASA because it's all about transforming. And the really interesting things I found about this NASA conference is they were outwardly telling you that we have advanced propulsion systems. They talk about ion propulsion. On top of that, they talk about printing rockets. They talk about how that's classified. They talk about how a lot of this technology they have for decades, and now they're just rolling it out due to microprocessors being built on a commercial level, largely to do with cell phones and other objects. I thought that was interesting. They talk about Red Dragon and their partnership with SpaceX. They talk about the entire mesh network that really is Starlink, coupled with the Blackjack DARPA program. But most of all, what I found really interesting is I continually try to explain to people, you're not going to Mars. You're not going to the moon. Robots are going there. And that is also reiterated in this conference. And anybody can watch both Transformers Part 1 and Part 2, again, May 18th, 2016. Before we get into it, we got plenty of clips to play. We clipped them out. I want you to thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Remember, I could not possibly do this without you. Remember to Rockfin and Rumble. Rockfin, $9.99 a month or $99.99 for the year. Those people that lock in for that big subscription for a year really helps, and you get all sorts of other great premium content such as The Last American Vagabond, Whitney Webb, AM Wake Up, and so many others. Really important. And don't forget to rumble it on up. We are 10,000 strong over on Rumble. Thank you so much. I am a documentary filmmaker. They are important. Loose Change, Final Cut, and Fabled Enemies. 21st anniversary of 9/11 right around the corner. I'll be having Richard Gage and another individual on tomorrow. We're going to be discussing 9/11 a lot more. I just recently had a piece published in the River Cities Reader, and we're going to have the founder and main operator of the River Cities Reader, Todd McGreevy, on to discuss that as well. And Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, Shade the Motion Picture, all free, and I want you to watch them. So let's buckle up and get ready. Now, this is the first segment where you got somebody from Rocketdyne talking about these printing of basically not only smaller rockets, but downloading a program and they kind of just self-assemble, right? That's very different from what we used to have. And I'm reaching back here because yesterday I was going through this Associated Press book of Footprints on the Moon. And, you know, it's very interesting because it just shows you how dominant the Russians were, right? Here's the Men, Machine, and Monkeys. Let's bring this up so everybody can see it. It's one of those finds I find at a thrift store, right? Men, Machines, and Monkeys. And it makes you realize that back in the day, a lot more was going on than we could ever realize. And it makes you question what's going on today because largely what we perceive of NASA, and it kind of speaks to this conference because the person in the middle there is the author of The Martian, which is the book that got turned into a movie with Matt Damon, and really aggrandizing this Hollywood image of what NASA is. But really what NASA is, it's about what? Weaponizing space and bringing forth a bunch of other technologies, propulsion systems, and much, much more. They want transhumanism, and they slide that in there in this conference just a little bit. But let's start it out, and let's talk about the ion propulsion systems.
you know, things like solar electric propulsion, another thing I like saying. So kind of blow our hair back. Give us a sense of like what you guys are working on, you know, that's really cool and how it fits into all this.
You know, we're working on, like we said, we support government, we support commercial, and we do primarily propulsion, which is engines, big engines, motors, those type of things, as well as power. The key things, you know, neat things we're working on today, we're doing ion propulsion, which is a form of electric propulsion, and it reduces the mass. You talk about bringing the cost down. Everything we throw off the planet now has to go on a rocket that costs quite a bit of money. So the smaller you can make it, the cheaper it gets. So we have solar electric propulsion that we'll be putting on these next missions. We're working the technology on NASA contracts and internal, and it'll half or 1/10 the size, depending on how we do that. So that's one thing, and it looks just like, you see the blue glow from the old Star Trek, it looks just like that, and it is like that.
So I want to stop it there. Oh, and it is like that. Think about that. Now, later on, she'll talk about a lot of the technologies that have been around for like 30 plus years. But think about the propulsion system for a second, and then think about that type of glow, and think about how many UFO encounters and eyewitness accounts have that same type of propulsion system glow. Just want to throw that out there. I think it's really important.
So we're printing rockets now. You know, we're doing 3D printing of whole rockets, and a number of people are doing it. And the hard thing about
So does that mean I can illegally download a rocket?
You know, well, I probably shouldn't talk about that. You know, rocket technology is still protected, right? No, but it gets to that. You get a model, and you can do that. The really big ones you can't do yet, but you can certainly do the smaller ones.
So that's the Martian author next to her. And think about what she just said. First of all, rocket technology is really protected. Of course it is. What the public sees is a small portion of what they're really doing. For instance, when we're watching these Falcon 9s and, you know, even the Artemis launch, and you look how large these rockets are as compared to the ship that's riding on them, okay? They're massive. She's talking about printing micro-sized rockets. There are launches all the time of things we can't imagine and are not privy to from many of these remote locations and black sites, I assure you.
We talk about the small sats. We can actually print a whole Cubesat propulsion system in one pass.
So let's just stop there. A Cubesat propulsion system. Now, we're going to talk about nanosats, Cubesats. I'm going to show you some of those. All right, that is certainly on the horizon. But what I want people to understand is this is 2016, and even then, many of them were equipped with propulsion systems, even though they deny at the time that that's the case there. Here, take a look here. This is JPL. This is NASA. These are the type of CubeSats. And I've seen a couple of videos. In fact, the History Channel went over one where they're showing this UFO from a pilot, and it's cube shaped. It's not a UFO. It's one of these. You know, it's a real video, and this is the real deal. All right, and these things have been around for a long time, and who knows? First of all, they're not really made of metal. They're fabricated with other materials. Again, there's so much classification surrounding a lot of this stuff that this is what they're showing us, and we can only imagine how far they've gotten. So let's continue with our Rocketdyne guest, Julie Van Cleek.
And those are things that, you know, bring down not just the cost of the product, they're more efficient, they bring down time, and all of this just continues to fuel the cycle, like as George was saying it. So it's really a transformative time. We're building off the things that we've put in place for the last few decades, but now we can actually take them that next step.
So let's just stop it right there. We're building off the things we've put in place for the last few decades. But now the technology is such they can mass produce them at a much cheaper level. So they can make them operational. Okay? So now I'm going to show you a segment where they're talking about microjet propulsion systems. And once again, you talk about this stuff. If you think the end-all, be-all of rocket systems is what they're showing you, remember, most rocket systems were born out of missile systems from World War II. They have massive implications when it comes to actual national security and weapon systems. But here we go, microjet propulsion.
These hundreds and thousands of small sats or CubeSats is they're free flyers. They don't have propulsion systems today.
See, right there, he says that they don't have propulsion systems. Now, remember, she already talked about how some of them do. All right, so they're getting ready to massively put these things out with new propulsion systems. I want to point that out.
Julie and other propulsion companies are working on micro jets. They're micro rockets. So in a CubeSat that has the brains from Andy's telephone and a camera that came out of his telephone, it's going to have a little microjet from Julie's company and others. And they're going to be able to maneuver around, but most importantly, they're going to be able to comply with the law that says when you put a vehicle in space, it's got to be able to be controlled for a controlled reentry where it will not harm anybody on the ground. And we're going to be able to do that.
So they're telling you, and by the way, we're going to go over this global system where it's even a sensor system. You know, Dennis Bushnell, who we're going to end with, because we get to virtual Mars and haptic feedback and essentially robots going to Mars, not you and I. And that's the reality. They're not sending human beings. Genetically, they have to space harden humans. We're starting to find that out, okay? So here they talk more about these cube satellites, and they also talk about really what I would call the indoctrination of children. And they have these contests where classrooms, okay, design one of these nano satellites, and then they put them up on one of the SpaceX missions, and they go up with all the other ones. And just like you had in Transformers Part 1, right, Martin Rothblatt talking about bringing in small kids, women, girls, to be coders, to bring in the AI, they want to indoctrinate kids into not only a track trace database society, but a greater importance on NASA and space. So let's get into nano satellites and children.
Sats, so CubeSats. When you talk about a revolution, I don't know whether there's anybody out there who has a son or a daughter who goes to St. Thomas More Elementary School in Northern Virginia. First elementary school to send a spacecraft into space this week.
Elementary school?
Elementary school.
Whoa.
It was launched. It was launched off the International Space Station. It was among a lot of CubeSats that were sent to station on a probably orbital or a SpaceX vehicle, because we have room to do that. And so there is an elementary school in Northern Virginia that can now brag about, you know, my spacecraft is up there doing stuff. And once you get that into kids, it's like I did science fairs. My 7th grade science teacher turned me on to science fairs, and I never looked back. I can guarantee you that these kids at St. Thomas More, they are never going to be told we can't do that, because they're going to say, you know, when I was in elementary school, I made a satellite. What do you mean we can't do that?
Can't top
So
that.
right there, look, obviously we want people to quote unquote shoot for the stars, pun intended, right? But when there are limitations and realities, we should also know that. And that kind of points to the fact that they indoctrinate the kids and there's nothing we can't do. There are no limitations, right? And again, I'm not NASA. I'm not privy to everything that they are. But the vast majority of this technology is about not only track trace database, but the weaponization of space and the grand illusion that somehow humans are going to go to the moon and go to Mars and we're going to colonize it and it's going to be the best thing ever and this technology is going to be for all of us, when they're telling you that virtually you'll be going there. But let's get into the global nanosat network and this track trace database society I talk about all the time via Blackjack and others, right? We talk about that network because it is so important. Musk isn't your buddy. The old Musker do. Let's bring him up because he's not your friend. This is all NASA is DARPA, right? They're all little sub-programs. Blackjack program. There it is. Lockheed Martin. And by the way, this is sponsored by Lockheed Martin and Samsung. to integrate Project Blackjack satellites. This is the mesh network and grid you're about to hear this gentleman talk about.
Through ISS has been sort of seeding the small sat market. But you can't launch into all the different orbits from ISS. And so what we'll be able to do with our vehicle Launcher 1 is to put these satellites into other orbits. But I think what's interesting is that the U.S. is now leading a new area, which is the small satellite sector. And, we're going to see tremendous growth. The geostationary, the number of geostationary satellites getting launched into orbit isn't really growing right now. But you're going to see this huge growth in small satellite constellations over the coming years that will establish essentially a new information skin for planet Earth.
An information skin for planet Earth, which is largely in place right now and only getting bigger.
That helps us with navigation and communication and weather and remote sensing. And I think it'll be eventually sort of a permanent new skin around the planet. And
a permanent new skin around the planet.
A lot of that is being catalyzed by the work that was done inside NASA labs and now inside the national lab at ISS.
So there you go. Again, NASA pushing that as well. That's what the commercialization is about. It's that private sector partnership. And now we're going to get into Red Dragon. See, it's going to be these SpaceX models that are finally going to get down there and have a lander's atmospheric entry to Mars, right? Ooh, yeah. They're going to do it. Yeah. But they're really not. And we'll get to that in a second. So here we go. SpaceX.
When you stood up those programs, they're now flying to LEO, which is low Earth orbit, just to the International Space Station, about 250 miles or so above the Earth. But, these entrepreneurs, they think big. Elon Musk and Richard Branson. And, Elon's talking about going to Mars.
He is.
I wonder, does that put him in competition with
No,
NASA?
no.
Explain to me that.
It is not a competition at all, and I think most people in the audience are quite aware that we recently, or SpaceX recently announced that they were entering into a partnership with us for what they call the Red Dragon. What he's looking at that we want, we look at them coming back and landing on a barge or coming back to the Cape and landing on a mat somewhere. That's what we call, hypersonic or supersonic retro propulsion. We are not doing that right now. We're not investing in that, but we don't need to if our commercial partners are doing it. So we're talking about reducing the cost to the taxpayer. If SpaceX can land a vehicle on Mars, that's one of the most critical challenges to us is what we call entry, descent, and landing. How do you get big masses on the surface of Mars? So that is all good information that we need, and it means we don't have to do 1, 2, maybe 3 tests that we would have to do if NASA were doing it all along.
Right.
Yeah, and in the meantime, he'll just send up our nanosat technology that they're utilizing in the Ukraine to link up to drones in warfare. Oh, and we'll also send up the classified versions, which are an extension of the Star Wars program that started in the 80s. No problem. Our Tom, thank you so much for the support. Thanks for the hard work and great info. Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate it. So now this same gentleman is going to talk about our presence on Mars in some respect. And who knows what that presence is? I'm sure a lot of it is highly classified. They've given us bits and pieces. We've seen the famous photographs that have stunned the world and got them to, is that a face on Mars? The pyramids on Mars. And, it has invented yet another subculture of the Hollyweird analysis of what space is, of what these programs do, of what NASA is. But he says, look, it's not our first rodeo. But then later on, he's going to get into how the really initial travel to Mars will be robots. And then we're going to let Bush know, who, again, chief scientist around during this whole time period here. Footprints on the Moon, AP, hardcover. Check it out. Might be able to find it on eBay, right? And he's letting you know, no, it's going to be robots. It's not going to be humans. I want to repeat it. It's going to be robots. Okay.
But you need to go back and read the book, because what you find is, you know, Mark Watney and his crew didn't land on Mars and have all this stuff land with them.
He's talking about the Martian, by the way.
They had been building that up over a period of decades, and that's exactly what NASA is doing today. We've been flying what we call precursors. So they're lead things that we need to do. On-orbit satellites for navigation, communications, relay, landers that can go out and survey so they know where we're going to land humans. All that stuff's been going on for 20, 30. We've been on Mars for 40 years. We didn't just come to this rodeo, so to put it.
I think there have been over 50 missions.
Wasn't it?
You've got to be thinking 30, 40, 50 years out. And Andy is absolutely right. And I tell people all the time, the very first things on the surface of Mars are going to be robots.
Right.
You know, think about what we do for American forces today around the world. We don't send soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines often into a very hot area first. We try to get in and make the environment safe for them using
Usually
robots or
like
whatever.
To send missiles in
Yeah,
first.
but we're actually.
Usually you send missiles in first. He's like, we do that. Yeah. Huh, weird.
Actually, I imagine there's going to be a fleet of robots, maybe humanoid. They don't have to look like humans. They're going to establish the habitat. They're going to.
Maybe humanoid, by the way. They're going to establish the habitat. And Bushnell's going to tell you they're going to be nano surveyor bots. But maybe humanoid.
Go in because with 3D printing, we can put a fleet of robots on the surface of Mars. We may find, based on what we know about the radiation environment, that we want to go underground rather than, you know, have huts on the surface that get blown away in the wind that doesn't exist. But
see that joke? Blown away in the wind that doesn't exist. Again, what do we really know about these planets, their environments, their atmospheres? Again, basically what NASA and Hollyweird suggest to us.
but that was a critical part. I tell my wife, it's a movie, okay? Very, very important part. But it may be that robots dig under, you know, go subterranean and establish the habitat. Anybody ever do, you know, build houses for charitable reasons? You don't go there, and there are no 2x4s on the lot. There are prefab structures, so you get eaves and walls, and that's what we're going to do on Mars. But we're going to print it, I think.
Also,
we're going to print it. So here it is. This is Bushnell back in the day having a discussion really about transhumanism, because this is more of a candid speech of us becoming cyborgs, and even then you're only going to virtually experience Mars. Okay, let's play it.
We're talking about robot exploration, and I'd mentioned Ray Kurzweil to you, and you'd said that he'd spoken at NASA. And to me, the way that you described robots almost as kind of like the children of mankind really stuck with me, and it put what we're doing on Mars right now in a new perspective for me.
And basically, he's talking about Kurzweil, who, again, is the head of Google's division. Google works with NASA, called Calico, which is their immortality division. Bushnell's going to point out that the Children of Mankind quote is actually from Hans Moravec, another transhumanist. And again, robots to Mars, transhumanism, NASA, the Transformers Conference. By the way, Bezos' own outfit. He's got his own space outfit. He's the competition. They actually talk about that competition in that forum. Lockheed Martin sponsored. They all interconnect. You get it? All of them. Interconnection.
Well, that quote, robots being the children of mankind, is actually from Hans Moravec from Carnegie Mellon. He has various books on this. Robot is one of them from the early OOs, as I remember. And the idea is that we are currently becoming cyborgs at a very fast rate. The IBM Blue Brain Project, which is nanosectioning the neocortex and replicating it in silicon, has made such good progress that they are claiming in 12 to 15 years they will be able to market a biomimetic human-level machine intelligence. the nano functionalization of robots is continuing apace very rapidly. So there's no reason why in the 10, 20 year, 15 to 25 year out, that exploration can't be done very well with robots at a cost which has been estimated at about 1/1000th that of sending humans. So one way to do this exploration of Mars and so forth is three ways. Three stages. One is to send the nano robots and instrument the planet and send back the data. And the Brits demonstrated 5 senses virtual reality: haptic, taste, touch, smell.
Haptic, taste, touch, smell. Notice taste. Did you just hear what he said? And we talk about where we're at now. And remember, they're also pushing the metaverse via the World Economic Forum. This is all integrated. So the Brits had 5 sense: taste, touch, smell, haptic feedback. In other words, you're immersed in these rooms that are giving you stimulation that you can feel without a suit. And the goggles will become smaller and smaller and smaller, and possibly not necessary if they get you to install a human brain interface. And I got sent yesterday, I think Simon Naylor actually sent it to me, another great member of the Bermas Brigade, where they are talking about a gentleman getting a human brain interface. He doesn't even have to have the brain surgery. They do it through the neck. And he's able to basically do some of the very small stuff where he starts thinking about using a computer keyboard and then typing the letters out. And that's something that's documented decades and decades and decades ago, DARPA and others. You can see some of that research with the minds of men. But let's let them finish it up. Because, again, virtually, you're going to be able to go to Mars.
Sight and sound recently. So everyone could explore Mars anytime they wanted to at 1/1000th the cost of sending people.
Yeah, we're not sending people. That's the whole point. So, folks, if you like this broadcast, thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Remember, I'm a documentary filmmaker, Loose Change Final Cut. Fabled Enemies, Shade the Motion Picture, and Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined are all free of charge. I encourage you to get them and share them. Please consider supporting the broadcast. You can do so by buying me a coffee. By the way, if you want to give me PayPal, jasonisvoid@yahoo.com. That's why we put that up there. That's more of a direct contribution. I want to remind people, Rockfin, another great way to support me, $9.99 a month or $99.99 for the year. And don't forget, we are also on Rumble, 10,000 strong. So in case YouTube kicks us off again, because you never know, I'm already harmful content because I cover controversial stuff. We got the other platform. So not about left or right, always about right and wrong. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you all on the flip side.